This is an introductory video to how to use Prescient Designer. To log in, you go to the Prescient Devices homepage and hit the login button to the top right. Once you do that, this will take you to the login screen. You can enter your email address and your password to log in. If you're logging in for the first time, you should hit the Forgot Password link. That'll send you a password reset email, and you can proceed to set a new password. Once you're done with this page, you hit continue. And this will require you to authenticate using your Auth0 Guardian app. So on your phone, just hit allow from your app screen. If you are on a community edition account, you are required to log in every 24 hours to keep your designer account active. If not, your designer account may be stopped. In that case, you just hit the Start Designer button, and this will spin up your designer account. This will take about a minute and a half or so because there are many cloud services to be connected behind the scene. Once Prescient Designer starts, you are taken to the Prescient Designer editor page. So on the editor page, you can see all the modules or the nodes you can use. You can drag and drop them into the workspace to use them. And in the workspace, that's where your design or your flow is. And to the right of the workspace, you have different tabs. The first tab is called the devices bar. This shows you how much memory and how much disk you have left in the Prescient Designer container. If you have edge devices set up, they will show up over here. There are other tabs that you can go to do various other functions. So in addition, if you hit this down arrow button, you get to the Prescient Designer nav bar. And on the nav bar, you can go to your dashboard page, documentation page. You can log out. If you have access to multiple designer accounts, then you have a select designer menu here. If you only have a single designer account, you do not have this menu. So in the workspace, this is where you design your functions here. And what you can see here is you have a dashboard element called a button. And when that button is pressed, a signal or data gets sent to this device subflow. And the device subflow processes the data. And then the device subflow sends the data to a function block. And then the function block does further processing, and it sends the result to a gauge on the dashboard, and also sends the result to a debug node in the debug window. So the button in the gauge would show up on the dashboard like this. So for example, if I press the button, you can see that there's some number that's happening on the gauge. And that's executed. That's executing basically this flow here. And this particular block that represents a device, you can add real physical edge devices to it. Right now, there's no edge device, so we're going to provision a edge device to show you how to associate that edge device with this device subflow block. So the way to do that is you go to the designer menu, go to System Tools, and Provision Edge Device. Then here you're given the instruction to provision a edge device of your own. For example, if you have a Raspberry Pi or any kind of edge gateway, you can copy this curl command here. So Control-C to copy. And now you can go to the SSH into your device. So I have an industrial Raspberry Pi device here, and I would paste the command I just copied. into the screen, and just hit enter. This is going to install the Prescient Edge software in your edge device. So the software does a bunch of checks, puts your device into a cloud database. Now it's asking you for a device ID. Device ID is something you define. You can use any alphanumerical string here. The only requirement is that the device ID has to be unique, meaning you cannot have two devices with the same device ID under one Prescient Designer account. So let's say if I call this one Rev Pi, maybe 01. That's the main device ID I give to it. So I press enter. Now the script is going to continue and will install all the necessary packages, including Node.js, Node-RED. It also installs the Prescient Edge runtime, which manages the Node-RED and Node.js processes to make sure that everything works properly. This process can take a few minutes, depending on how much RAM you have in your device. Okay, so now the Prescient device's provisioner is done, and you can actually see this device appearing in Prescient Designer. If you have any problems running this script, let us know, and we can help to figure it out. We also have other ways of installing either containers or snaps into devices. So let us know if there are other requirements on how to install Prescient Edge into your edge devices. So once this is done, you no longer need to log into your device anymore. You can program your devices directly from inside Prescient Designer. So we're going to go back to Prescient Designer. And now you can see that we have this device here. It shows the amount of memory and disk available in this device. And in addition, there's a little menu button here with a bunch of different options you can use. So to associate this device with a subflow, you double click on a subflow. And if you click here, in the device ID field, you can see that now this device appears. So if I just click on this button here and click on done, this now means that this device gets associated to this subflow here. And what it means is that once I hit the deploy button, in fact, whatever that's contained inside the subflow gets executed inside this device. It no longer gets executed in Prescient Designer anymore, but it will get executed inside this edge device here. So that's what I'm going to do. So I'll hit the deploy button. And you can actually see that this device is getting updated with the flow inside this subflow here. Initially, the first time you deploy, this may take multiple minutes. The reason is that Prescient Designer sends a flow down to the edge device. The Prescient Edge actually checks to see what packages are available. It would install all the missing packages, making sure that all the system parameters are working correctly. So this will take a while. It gets faster after the first install. So you can see that now the installation is successful. And you can tell because there's a little green lock button here. If it's green, it means that whatever that's running in the edge device matches to whatever that is in Prescient Designer. What does this mean? Well, this means that if I go into the subflow, so if I double click on the subflow and I hit edit subflow template, this is the flow that's inside the subflow. can drag and drop other blocks. You can build pretty complicated stuff. But whatever you build here will be shipped to the edge device and executed there. In this case, it's very simple. It's just generating a random number. But this random number is actually generated in the edge device. It's not generated in Prescient Designer. So that's why the Prescient Designer is called a distributed programming software, because it enables you to program different devices. So if you have multiple devices here, your devices are going to appear as a list here. You can click on multiple ones to associate all those devices to the same subflow. Or if you have a large number of devices, you can also create a file with the device IDs, and you can import large numbers of devices, thousands of devices, and associate that with a particular subflow. You can also have many other subflows. You can associate them with different devices or even the same devices. It's very flexible as to how to do it. Another thing you'll notice is that once you associate a subflow with one or more edge devices, the wires actually turn from a gray color to a blue color. This is because the button block is the dashboard, is running in Prescient Designer to produce a dashboard button. The function block is running in Prescient Designer for executing functions. So the data that's transmitted on those wires actually have to go through communication links to the edge device. Then the output of the edge device would send data, into the function block through a communication link. So that's why the wires are blue, which represents communication links between two different devices. Another interesting thing is that typically if you are designing a device application, you have to put in your own MQTT blocks, etc., to enable communication. In Prescient Designer, you don't have to do that. Basically, if you go into the subflow, you can see that all you need to do is define the inputs and outputs. So once you define that, at the level above it, you can just connect wires. And Prescient Designer will figure out how to enable the communication between the different blocks. So that makes it very convenient. There are a lot more advanced functions, such as, if you have a number of devices associated with a subflow, you can actually communicate with just one or a selected number of devices. You don't have to communicate with all of them. And for those type of advanced functions, please see our documentation. Now you get a flavor of how this distributed programming works. If you wanted to see other examples, watch other videos, or go to our documentation. This is compatible with Node-RED. So you can also go to the Node-RED website to look at examples of how to build pretty sophisticated functionalities.